I'd like to call the Dartmouth Planning Board meeting of August 19th in business at 7:02 p.m. And this meeting is being recorded, and I'd like to start it with a roll call vote. Margaret Sweet,
Here.
Nick Psychopedes,
Present.
Kevin Estes is here, and the chairman is Kevin Mello, who is not present, and our newly elected board member is not present either.
Kevin, this is Helio. I'm here.
Oh, hey,
Oh,
Helio,
hi.
how are you?
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hi,
So
Helio.
I'll extend the roll call vote to Helio.
Present.
Awesome. Okay, so we have two items on the agenda today. The first item is site plan review, PSPR 24-9, 10 Bridge Street, Assessors Map 117, Lot 170. Is there anybody on the call that is representing the applicant?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Ginsberg from Brewster Thornton Group Architects. I'm here with Dan DeSaris from Joe Casali Engineering and David Pereira from GGD Engineering. And we'll be sort of walking through the application today.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Great. So this is a much needed renovation of the Dartmouth Fire District #1 at 10 Bridge Street. It's been in planning for about 3 years now. We have gone through zoning. We have gone through a DPW review, and we are now at planning. Currently, the project is out to bid, and we'll plan on incorporating any comments from the planning board into the final built project. But we are rapidly approaching a deadline for a vote to approve the funding for the station. So we're out to bid at the moment while we are in permitting. And I'll turn it over to Dan, who can walk us through the site and the information in your packet.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan DeCesaris. I'm a registered professional civil engineer and project manager with Joe Casali Engineering in Warwick, Rhode Island. Am I able to share my screen? I have a brief PowerPoint I'll run through to kind of introduce the site and the project.
Yes, you are.
All set, you can share.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
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 All right, so as far as where we are in the town, the project is located just to the south and west of the intersection of Bridge and Cleveland Street. As noted, is Assessor's Plat 117, Lot 170, and that encompasses about a half acre of land. The project is entirely within the town's general residence zone, and it does abut a limited business zone along the coastline. So zoomed into the site, the corner of our site does clip the 100-year floodplain, as you can see, that far south corner. However, all of our improvements are located outside the flood zone, so there's no impacts to the existing floodplain. As far as the project goes, the existing garage is scheduled to remain and undergo some interior renovations, which Nate can get a little further into later. The existing offices structure is to be raised and replaced with a 2-story, 2,690 square foot building addition. In general, the basement is going to be composed of storage and mechanical space. The first floor will consist of offices, training space, and a kitchen. And then the second story will be bunk space with restrooms and a day room. As far as Nate mentioned that we have been before the zoning board, we did receive a variance at the July 24th meeting as a portion of the addition extends into the front yard setback. And we also received a special permit at that same meeting for lot coverage. As you can see, the maximum allowed is 50%. The pre-existing condition was about 88%. And due to the slightly larger footprint of the addition, we're proposed at 91% lot coverage. As far as our site layout goes, for the fire district use, 1 parking space is required per maximum number of employees on any shift. In this case, the max is 10 employees, so 10 spaces are required. Based on our current layout, we are currently providing 12 parking spaces, including 1 handicap accessible space. Adjacent to that accessible space is a concrete walkway that provides accessible access to the building. In addition, those 2 spaces along Bridge Street are to be designated as fire department parking only spaces. At the rear, we do have 2 electric vehicle charging spaces as well. So the parking, due to the unique layout of this lot, the existing conditions and the proposed conditions don't meet a couple of sections of the town code. Specifically, parking in residential districts is to be 20 feet from all street and property lines. In this case, the front parking is right along the property line, and the rear parking is about 4.5 feet from the property line. So we are requesting a waiver from that section of the town code. In addition, the parking facility dimensions code requires 10 by 20 foot spaces. And while the majority of the spaces are 10 by 20, the 3 spaces at the front are 10 by 18. So we are asking for a waiver from that, as well as the aisle width, as technically those 3 front spaces don't have any aisle within the property. In addition, we are requesting permission to install a light pole at the fueling station at the rear of the facility. We do want to note that the light is required for emergency fueling, and it will only be on when the pump is activated. And the purpose that light is going to replace some of the lights along Cleveland Street, so there will be less light spillover onto the property line. And there are some pretty dense trees along those 2 property lines, which will help shield the resident and church to the north. We did discuss the 2 waivers for the parking. And then as far as other site amenities, we do have a small concrete patio at the rear, along with a generator and enclosure. And then, as I mentioned, we have that fueling station at the far western corner of the property, along with a cast-in-place concrete pad for staging of vehicles that are fueling. Nate, I'll turn it over to you if you want to get a little bit into the details in the architectural design. Nate, I think you're muted.
Sure, thanks, Dan. The architectural design is based on the community that we're in. We're trying to be very sympathetic to both the business district that has a lot of shingle commercial buildings, as well as the residential district, both of which are very close abutters on all sides. The accessibility is a big new feature here. It is providing accessibility to the front door and the main entrance, which they haven't had before. We are relocating flagpoles and monument stone, which are both going to be pulled back a little closer to the building to allow for more area for that accessible ramp and public parking, firefighter parking in the front. So we spent a lot of time looking at the lights around the building. There is a distinction between 2 different lights for the building, the sort of accent lights that are going to allow the building to highlight signage and be well within the kind of light levels of a residential neighborhood. And then there are some floodlights in the back that that are required for emergency situations, including fueling, but also when a emergency call comes in at night and there's some staging that needs to happen in the back. The cupola has been modified to bring that down a little bit. So the height of the building has already actually come down from where it has been, even though we're going to get a taller addition on one side. But we've spent a lot of time trying to pull the mechanical units up onto the roof to try. We're pulling the fueling station away from the road and putting it as far back in the back corner as possible to, again, pull that away from the neighbors. The generator that is that is close to the road is going to be enclosed in with a fence and protected from view and from noise. So we've certainly gone through a lot of this, understanding that it's a very tight site. We were very happy that zoning allowed us the ability to expand beyond the setbacks because it is much needed. You can probably see from those plans, even with the additional space, we were really struggling to get everything into this building because reached out to several neighbors. They've seen the plans. They were supportive. We actually had neighbors get up and speak in support and write letters in support of the project for zoning. I don't know if they also sent letters to this board as well, but we've had nothing but really great support from the neighbors. Are there any questions from the board?
Okay, is that your presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll open it up to questions from the board.
Do you need, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask a question. Do you need a dumpster on the site?
There is a temporary dumpster that's been used, but they're not planning on a permanent dumpster.
So you will not require a dumpster.
Correct.
Okay, and also, it's been noted that we don't have the architect or the lighting plans with the last set of plans that you sent us. On Friday, I guess those two sheets were missing.
You're saying that the most recent set of plans that you received did not have the light calculations? Is that what you're saying?
That I'm saying
The
that,
lighting plan and the architectural plan.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not sure about the architectural plan because that would have been part of any set. The lighting plan, I think, was submitted previously, but we can certainly get both of those to you.
Yeah, Nate, I'm pretty sure we've submitted that plan back early in August.
Yes.
And we've
And
made,
there were some
Yeah.
updates. So there were some updates as the plans progressed and we updated the board. I don't think we did resubmit the lighting plan because that hadn't changed.
I know, but we have to have a whole complete set. That is the same set that all the departments get. And the planning board doesn't have that set,
Gotcha.
as far as I've been told. Because we don't take sheets out from
Sure.
plans previously. We need a complete
You need a
set.
full set every time. So.
Yes, every
Yep,
time.
understood.
Yeah.
I'm done, Kevin, for now.
Okay. Nick or Helio?
No, I don't have any questions. I think it's a shy of us missing what Margaret noted. I'm very content with their approach and the fact that the neighbors are supporting it. It's been before the ZBA, and that this isn't a restaurant. This is emergency services, so I'm on board.
I do have a couple of questions. Certainly the need for this project is well known, and I'm certainly supportive of it as well. A couple of questions that came up, and I don't, in full transparency, I did not see the previous submission just because of my own time on the planning board. Regarding the location of the generator, seeing that it's outside or within the setback area, would that be considered a structure that is being installed on the site? And if so, is that legit within the setback area? And then, because second to that, has there been an evaluation to noise output on the generator that might have an adverse effect on neighbors, especially given that it's within the setback?
Nate, do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah,
Yes.
unless Dan, you have any answers to about the structure? Is that considered a structure because it's a fence and it would be sort of like, putting the condenser units out there.
Yeah, we'll have to look to see if there's a specific definition on what code would consider a structure. I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but in my experience, it'd be considered an accessory structure and not primary. If any.
Yeah. From a noise standpoint, we did study different options, locations. The generators installed within a sound attenuated enclosure that gets you to 70 dB at 20 feet away, and that's without the fencing around it that will, deaden the noise a little bit more.
And that generator, is that, how often do you expect that to run, or is that only an emergency generator?
It's an emergency generator, but it does require, a 20-minute test once a week, so we can time that when it's best to run. Least disruptive.
So I would recommend, once we get clarification on whether it qualifies as a structure or not, that there'd be some qualifications on the noise output, assuming that it remains in the setback. There are DEP and it might be OSHA requirements to those limitations. And then I guess my other comment regarding the non-conforming parking spaces in the front, you're short by 2 feet, 18 instead of 20. And looking at the floor plan, the graphics that were presented, has any consideration been given to, because in looking at the floor plan, it looks like almost like a standalone addition that has 2 entry points on the lowest level. Almost like this box is somewhat fluid. Was any consideration given to move or shift that box to the left of the plan to give us that 20 feet so that we're not dealing with any waiver and the spaces could be conforming?
Yeah, the site does become very tight, and the turning radiuses as the trucks come in the back are pretty critical. We did intentionally align the back of the building with the apparatus bay to kind of avoid conflicts back there where it's an operational issue. And then the accessible ramp in the front obviously has restrictions on what we can provide for widths there. It's actually not a ramp; it's a sloped walkway, but that is
one of the issues is if we were to slide this back, this whole footprint shifts back, and this driveway gets narrower. The movement of trucks pulling in from Cleveland Street into this driveway, those turning radiuses need to be wide. So we start to get a pinch point in this corner. So
yeah, and as you can see with the generator, we sort of ran out of space pretty quickly back there.
Well,
is that red zone kind of a do not enter zone for the apparatus?
Yes.
yeah, there's actually a short retaining wall right along the to the back of the generator.
So I guess my question remains, if you slide the building box 2 feet to the left, do you have to alter the size or the limit of that red box into the aisle? In other words, keep the retaining wall that you're showing behind the generator, keep everything as intended, just slide the box over 2 feet.
Yeah, I mean, this sidewalk is already at a 4-foot minimum, and then we've got an additional 4 feet between the edge of the sidewalk and the fence. I think if things get any tighter, it's going to present a safety hazard.
I don't have any other questions.
I have a comment, Helio. Right now, those parking spots are 18 feet, correct?
Correct.
And as far as I am being told and not being told, there hasn't been an issue with those 18 feet parking spots. They've been there forever like that. I don't have,
We know.
I don't have a problem with that, Helio. I think, that is a tight spot. And this fire station has been there for, I don't know, maybe 100 years. I don't know how long it's been there, but maybe 100 years. So I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that statement. Obviously it's important not to make anything worse.
Right.
I was just looking for an opportunity to not have
Sure.
the waiver.
Sure. Now, do we have landscape waivers that are being requested? And do we have curb cuts? I've got a note here that says the following waivers should be requested: landscaping requirements and curb cut requirements as they are existing. Do I need waivers for those on the plan? Everything has to be put on the plan, gentlemen, you know that.
No, there's no new landscaping proposed. The landscaping is going to be mimicked as it exists today. So there'll be perimeter landscaping around the northern and western property line, as well as that small island along Cleveland Street. And then there's a grassed area to the east side of the building addition.
No, I understand that, but why I'm asking if we need a waiver is because you're not going to be doing landscaping as it is today, as would be required today.
Mhm.
Am I correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so you're going to need a waiver for that.
Correct.
Your
So
curb
that
cut
makes-
requirements, as they are existing, I really don't know that much about the curb cut requirements, but are you going to need a waiver just to put on the plan so people can see that there was a waiver given? Yes, no?
My gut tells me yes. I guess we would need a waiver from the curb cut requirements. Again, we're mimicking existing conditions. We're not changing the width of those curb cuts, but
I fully understand that, but as according to today's bylaws,
Yep.
you're gonna need a waiver. Okay,
understood.
all right.
And would the
Is that an
curb cut
existing-
the curb cut would be for being less than 25 feet from a residential property and 100 feet from an intersection?
That probably is it, Helio. Of course, we're not gonna make them change that,
No,
but
I agree.
just because people are gonna look at this plan and say, gee, that doesn't match what it is today. So it's better to be safe than sorry to just put it on the plan that a waiver from the planning board was given. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin and Nick?
I agree. I don't think it should be approached any differently than any other plan. No disrespect to emergency services and or how this was proposed, but there needs to be a sense of continuity in our approach too. So I think it's just a formality, but I think we need to maintain
Right.
it.
This is for what you're saying for the existing condition.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
you need a waiver.
I agree with this, but we have the option of approving this administratively. since we're not talking about major waivers, they still have to be granted.
I don't disagree with that. I think Margaret's making the point that before we're done, it needs to be there. If it's present in the next meeting or it's an administrative effort, they're one and the same.
Yeah,
Margaret, do you agree?
Yeah, I'd like to see them back with the plan, the full set of plans, the way it should be, with everything in it.
that
Before,
would
and
be,
administer,
that's the preferred route for sure.
yes, and, you know, postpone this. I know we're busy, but we could put our agenda to put these gentlemen first on September 9th, because I think it's important that we have a full set of plans with the waivers that are supposed to be there. I'm not comfortable administratively because of the situation that the planning board is
Well,
in.
that's why I was bringing up that
Yeah.
I would have that's the only concern that I have as well.
Right.
I agree with both of you on that.
Helio, do you agree?
No objection for me. I would also just insert the clarification on the generator, if it's structure or not, and any conditions required because of sound.
I'm speaking, I know, for the board. We're all on board for this, gentlemen. Okay, we want this done. This is needed. It's a good project for the town. We just need to make sure that everything is, everything's the way it should be on the plan.
Absolutely. Yep.
I agree with that.
Understood.
I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to continue this until September 9th. And with the provisions that we have mentioned to the engineers.
Second.
Okay, and get a second from, that's a motion by Margaret Sweet and Nick by, a second by Nick Psychopatis. Can I take a vote? Margaret Sweet,
Yes,
Nick Psychopatis,
Yes.
Helio,
Yes.
and Kevin Estes, yes.
thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Planning board members,
Yes,
I just wonder if you could make a note, so we can know specifically, kind of in a list detail, so that the engineer and the architect will be quite specific on what's needed for September 9th, so. if someone
they
could
have it, Kevin. They have it.
just-
Yep, they have.
I know. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2 on the agenda, tree committee presentation. Initial presentation for proposed 2025 general bylaw. Is there somebody to speak on this item?
Ann Parson, I'm Andrea Langhauser. I'm on the Dartmouth Tree Committee bylaw subcommittee, but Ann Parson is here as the chairman. I think she just got unmuted, so I'm gonna pass it over to her.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us tonight. We want to share a draft of the tree bylaw that we've been working on for quite a while, and Andrea actually has a PowerPoint presentation, and can she share that with you?
Yes.
So I'm going to be giving you a brief introduction. Andrea is going to take the ball from there and give you more specifics. But basically, to begin with, we were appointed as a town committee November 22. We actually began 2 years before that. So we've been working towards becoming a tree committee and identifying what needs to be happening in this town with trees. Why did we form? I think it's pretty obvious that the tree canopy across town is under a lot of pressure, and more towns actually across the country and Massachusetts are forming bylaws, especially for protection, education, preserving Dartmouth's tree canopy and mitigating the effects of climate change is a big motivator here. Now, Andrea, do you have your PowerPoint? Can you get that going?
The host has disabled my screen sharing.
DC, chat,
Yep, 1 second.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just talk on our mission basically is to
Should
promote.
be all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chad.
So the next slide. There's our mission to promote the protection, planting, and care of trees and forests, as well as to raise awareness of the many benefits that trees have for our community. Next slide, please. And again, I think most of you are aware of the significance of trees. We seem to live in a very leafy, wonderful town, but there's a lot of pressure on our trees. And one of the pressures that is foremost is that they're aging and they aren't being, the older trees are coming down and there's not much replanting happening. So we want to expand on the authority of the Mass General Law, Chapter 87. We want to find inroads to planting more trees, establish a dedicated fund for the care and management of trees. I'm actually going to be going up to Town Hall next week to try and create that fund or set up that structure. Next slide, please. I think this is you, Andrea, where you take over.
Okay. I'm Andrea Langhauser. We've already been to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, in order to move forward with this discussion really with the Planning Board, and we've been to the Board of Public Works a couple times on we wanted to get a sense tonight from you on just the concepts we're considering for the bylaw, so that we've probably most importantly is what we do here in the general bylaw. We want to make sure complements and coordinates with what you're doing at the planning board level. We don't want to interfere with what you're already doing. We're trying to fill holes where it's not, where the planning board doesn't have review. So think of that as we go through the presentation of why a tree bylaw. Currently the town of Dartmouth works under the authority of Mass General Law, and the tree warden, who is also in our town, is the DPW director. He's responsible for managing all our shade trees within the public way. And as you're most familiar, the public way is the pavement plus the legal layout around the pavement. The public shade trees are defined as all trees within the public way. A setback there, the state law allows trees to be planted up to 20 feet back from a public way, as long as you have written approval of the landowner. We wanted to expand on that concept in the town bylaw. The tree warden does have to review any cutting, trimming, or removing of a public shade tree, and it's come to the tree warden's attention lately that planting a tree in the public way also requires review. So a shade tree hearing is only needed for removal. So sometimes the tree warden does things administratively according to the state law, but any removal goes through a publicly noticed public hearing. Utilities obviously couldn't possibly do the number of hearings and reviews needed in order to keep our lines clear of vegetation. So they do annual vegetative management plans, and we're not suggesting any change there. The state law has a fine of $500 per tree for removing trees without a permit. We'd like to expand upon that concept as well, because the tree warden as well as the tree committee recognize that $500 a tree doesn't pay for the cost of the tree or its replanting. So, so we're asking just for your conceptual feedback on what we're trying to do before we come up with any, before we come up with actual language. So we want to expand the definition of a public shade tree, because right now it generically says all trees within the public way. So we'd just like to clarify that that's any tree with a trunk, any part of the trunk is within the public way. And we also would like to expand with a new concept of, if a mature tree has a tree canopy that extends over into the pavement, over the pavement itself, which is well within the public way, that we'd like to have that considered a public shade tree as well. We're speaking to the tree warden about that. From a implementation standpoint, we're interested in making in all the benefits that the tree canopy has to the public space, and so we'd like to maintain that canopy on the public way, but we're probably going to write it so that the tree warden isn't taking control of the backside of the tree, and that's managed by the homeowner where the tree trunk sits. Would you want to talk about each of these, or do you want to wait till the end?
It's up to you.
I'd like to talk just for a moment, because I don't know how
Sure.
far the presentation is going to go. Unless I learn more, I just want to share that I'm in opposition of the majority that was just stated about a tree on one's property whose trunk belongs to them, but the actual canopy exceeds such and becomes public, and then thereby they have to follow perhaps the public definition. I'm happy to listen more. I think this is great. I have planted a lot of trees and a lot of plants. There's no one in my family that has more of a green thumb than I do, but at the same time, I want to protect the homeowner. My mom, God rest her soul, planted a tree when I was a kid. We did it together, and if that tree falls today, it's going to split the house that it sits near in half. And this exact subject could prevent that tree from being altered. So to this point, because you want an opinion, I'm concerned about that last point. The trunk being where it sits, and yet the canopy exceeds the public line, and then it becomes part of the public discussion. But I look forward to learning more. But I also want to make sure that as much as we need to plant trees and maintain canopy cover, we can't forget the homeowners either.
We've been hearing a lot of support for public property rights, for private property rights, and so I'm sure that we'll be very sensitive to that issue. I think if a tree needs to be trimmed or altered, if it's a public shade tree and it needs to be trimmed or altered, the town's going to do it. This is a private tree, if it needs to be trimmed or altered, a permit would be required only if it was being removed. So if your mother, God rest her soul, was still alive, she would call the tree warden and say, I have these issues. And if they're on the backside of the tree, backside that's affecting the house, we can word it the way Tim Barber wants to implement it, which is, if it's on the backside of the house, the canopy is, he doesn't have an interest in it. It's your tree. The concern is to talk to him. The removal of it, yes, that would require a hearing. But I hear what you're saying, and we'll be sensitive to that. And when we have the language, we'll be sensitive to it now, and we try to get the language right. We're looking for oversight. We're looking for oversight. And what you'll find with the permit review, generally what we're looking for is a replacement tree. That's like the whole concept of the bylaw, is if you're going to take a tree down and it has public rights, it's providing some public resource. If it's providing some public resource, then would like you to bring it to the tree warden's attention, and perhaps you end up with a replacement tree. That's the concept. Whether or not it fits for drip line, tell me how that works.
Margaret, can I just add something?
Sure.
I understand and respect your approach. When I see, and this is a whole different subject, but right at the moment, I don't know how many potential trees we're talking about, but I think it's fair to say that when pieces of property and land are excavated in preparation for development, and/or parking lots that were slated for 180 or 360 cars, and they're never at capacity, there are many other ways throughout this town and other towns to preserve a significant number of trees without ever impacting a homeowner. I appreciate your effort, and I'm not saying that I'm not interested. I would just love to know more as we move forward as it relates to numbers, and perhaps are we trying to make an effort here in affecting a homeowner when a land site developer removes 360 trees on one site plan?
Well, that's true. I'm glad you brought that up, because we are hoping that the planning board will continue to be responsible for site plan review, for subdivision review, and we're happy. The tree committee itself, myself as a retired environmental planner, we have already had conversations with your former town planner and Ross, your assistant town planner, in terms of having your subdivision rules and regs and your site plan rules and regs address the needs of the trees. And we're not going to do site plan review. Honestly, the planning board has the most primary job in protecting existing trees, because the largest developments in town are run through the planning board.
Fair, very fair.
Well, I agree with Nick. I don't like some of the wording in this. It borders on eminent domain as far as I'm concerned. If I have a tree in my front yard and I want to take my tree down, I don't think the town of Dartmouth can tell me whether or not I can take my tree down on my own property. I don't like that.
Got it.
Okay, because
I hear you.
I will say this to you, because I'm very open about it. If that's not taken out at town meeting, Margaret's going to speak up about it, because you can't do that. Okay.
You're going to love the next one. The drip line.
I've already probably got it circled. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the purpose of looking at trees that have a canopy that extends onto the pavement is because those are the most mature trees that are near the public space. And they're the ones that are providing the shade. They're the ones that are providing some of the stormwater. They're the ones that really establish our canopy. I hear what you're saying about private space. So setback trees, I can tell you right now that the existing law says that if a tree got planted within 20 feet of a public way, with the written permission of the landowner, if it was planted by the town or the utilities, with the permission of the landowners, those trees could have the same protections as a public shade tree already under the existing state law. These are, and we've spoken to Tim Barber about this, and a former DPW superintendent who was tree warden did do some planting, but it doesn't happen very often. And Tim's not aware of it happening under his watch. They might do some over on Tucker Road because there's a large number of trees that need to be planted. What's happening in the up to 20 feet, it could be 5 feet, it could be 3 feet. But what's happening in this, the reason the state law has a setback area is the same reason why on a subdivision plan, you might put a tree easement on the backside of your new right of way. Because once you put the pavement, the sidewalk, the utilities in place, the tree roots don't have as much room. And you've seen in some of the older communities where trees planted in small places kind of, push up the sidewalks. So by putting them on the backside of the right of way as a public tree, but on the backside of the right of way, the tree grows better. None of this is done under the state law without approval of the property owner. I am already hearing what you're saying, that you wouldn't like to, we want to clarify what the state law says. And you can argue it all you want, but the state law already says it. We want to clarify that. Whether or not we go any farther than that, with actually asking that if the tree is going to be planted by the town and the landowner is okay with planting within adjacent to the right of way, but on his property, would like to maintain that as a public resource because it was planted with town funds. We've gotten this falls into the area of it's on private land, and if there are different ways of handling this in different towns. It doesn't have to be fully a town resource for the rest of its life, but it is the better place to plant a tree. So would like to get some flexibility on putting trees there instead of if you're familiar with Elm Street, a lot of large trees are planted adjacent to, and are coming down now because of their age, adjacent to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk isn't wide enough, and the tree doesn't have enough room. But if those landowners allowed the tree to be right on the other side of the sidewalk, when the new tree got this as big as the old trees are today, it wouldn't be a problem.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I think Andrea is pointing out correctly that the way of the future really is going to be setback trees. When we walk down our streets now, it was the old planting scheme of, you see a lot of Norway maples close to the street, but those end up very disruptive and need, a lot of times they need trimming, and so the way of the future is to take the zone of 20 feet back. This will merge eventually, I hope, with an adopted tree program that this town once had and which I'm trying to resurrect, which is, getting money both from individuals and the town to plant trees on private property that would be setback trees, and let the residents say, yes, give me a setback tree and I'll take care of it. That's the way of the future. We're just covering the trees, especially that are already out there and need attention.
Okay, I have another question, because I'm a little confused. And again, property rights come first. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is with me. What happens when the town plants a tree on someone's land with permission? from that person, okay? And 7 years later, that house is sold. And the new owner does not know that that tree belongs per se to the town and cuts it down. Is he going to be responsible for $500 a day fine and to replace that tree at whatever size it is when he didn't know about it? Are you going to put
some towns require the written authorization to actually be put on the property deed, so that when he does title research, he sees it. Some towns have that the tree is a public resource is something that the town takes care of for 2 to 5 years, and then it becomes a private tree after that. So in your instance, if the person sold the property after 7 years, if there wasn't anything on the deed, then the new owner wouldn't know. And if we chose to do what some towns do, with only have it be a public resource for a short number of years, then it becomes a private resource. The first 2 years is once it's a stable tree, we're hoping that people have, and if the landowner approved of its location and the type of tree that was planted, we're hoping that it would be a feature that they wouldn't want to cut down readily.
Well, sometimes things happen and you have to cut down a tree. And I love trees, so I'm not, but I think putting it on a deed and telling someone that they can't cut a tree down and then charge them $500 because maybe that person's ignorant and didn't know that, I can't go along with that. So I think that some of the wording in this, and I've read it twice, this is my feeling, and after this, I will shut up. But I think that
it's important, because I think you mentioned that you're also a town meeting member. So we're here getting your feedback, but we're lucky enough to be getting the feedback on someone who's going to be actually voting on,
that's right.
on
I will
the
be
bylaw.
voting.
So
right. I think that
we are
too
trying to protect the public trees. And I hear loud and clear that you don't want anything off the public area. So we'll be careful of that. But we certainly will clarify what the state law already allows.
Well, you can clarify what the state law allows, but I don't think that they can come on my property and cut down my trees.
No, they wouldn't come. And as the state law is written, nobody would come onto your property and cut down your trees.
Well, that's all I'm saying. I don't want that. That's not going to happen. But I just think that, and this has to be a little fine tuned. Okay.
Oh, we're trying. It absolutely does. And so what we're trying to do is talk through the issues to find out where the point of agreement is, so that when we have full sentences, it's the concept that people came to consensus on. And so fine tuning is, I don't think it's what you really mean, Ms. Sweet. I think what you mean is you wanted to say something different. And so just tell me clearly, and I think you might have just told me clearly, you don't want any private tree. If a tree is on a private property, you don't want the town to have any opportunity to have an opinion on whether it is cut or trimmed.
I think if something's on private property, it belongs to that property owner. If a tree falls down on my land and it's my tree, I cannot call the town of Dartmouth to come and get it out. I'm responsible for taking the tree out, and it's my tree. And I hold that responsibility, and I adhere to it. And I certainly don't want the town coming on my property and trimming and cutting trees that on my trees.
I think in
Got
many
it.
cases they won't. I think we should keep going because there's
I
quite a
will.
bit more.
No, I appreciate that, but I think this is the probably the this is probably the private property issues is probably the most sensitive issue. And we've heard from 2 of the 4 members what they think of that. And we shouldn't have, everything else should be pretty straightforward. If we don't do anything more than the state law, it should be pretty much straightforward. So when we say that right now, a tree that is in the public way, if it needs to be removed other than because of pest infestation or being a hazard, a public hearing has to be held. We're suggesting that only for those trees that are within the public way or that this says the trimming removal of setback trees, but I'm hearing you say that's not something that you'd like to be part of. Planting trees on public land. Again, we would love to have those trees planted on the private property. If we're using town resources to buy and plant the tree, we'd like to maintain the public resource it values of the shade that it's providing. We suggest that any permit, and I don't know if we're going to have a permit for setback trees, but I suggest that any permit wouldn't be for the areas that the planning board addresses. We're hoping you're doing your best to maintain the mature trees on site plans and on subdivisions. So we were looking at the lots that you don't have an opportunity to review, and that would be the new construction on approval not required lots. That would be significant alterations on existing houses. That a significant alteration, requires it be brought up to current building code. And we'd like to say that that's a nice time to have a trigger for making sure that they don't cut back on any of the trees with a drip line, or if we had a setback area. And we're looking mostly when we're doing this permit, we're looking mostly for anybody that wants to replace a large tree that already exists, that it get replanted, that there be a replanting for the removal of the tree. And that there are measures taken to protect the trees, which you perhaps are doing already in subdivisions. There's a lot of standard protections for making sure you don't compact the ground where the roots of the tree are, that you're not bumping into the trunk of the tree. Rather standard protections that we'd like to have people aware of. So stop that, go away. Sorry about that. I've got a, there we go. The tree fund, we haven't been getting any pushback at all on establishing a tree fund. It would be putting any private donations and into the general, instead of going into the general fund, that it go into a tree fund, so that if there are any fines paid, that the use of that money is for the care and management of trees. One issue on the permit was in the replacement, the question of whether or not you replace a tree with another tree, or depending on the size of the tree, you replace it with a few trees, or you put funds in, you provide a financial contribution to the tree fund for planting elsewhere. I have heard from the town, the former town planner. I've heard from your chairman of the planning board that The town council has not been supportive of creating something similar to this for your sidewalks. And I understand you've tried to have a sidewalk fund, and town council said no. I'm sure that your response to town council was a lot of towns do have mitigation funds set up for sidewalks. And so we recognize that any mitigation funds for replacing large trees may not be something that town council goes for. We wanted to give it we wanted to give them a chance to review the question. And as I said, we're talking about a replacement. How much do you replace the tree? Is it just a single stem? Do you replace a 24-inch diameter tree with a 3-inch diameter tree? And hope that it's still there 100 years from now. But there may be, we're talking with the Board of Public Works about possible having gradations of replacement values, that the larger the tree taken down, the more replacement is provided because it's a higher value tree. Local fines.
Can I just interrupt for just a moment?
Sure, Nick.
I'm a bit puzzled, perhaps a bit worried about the homeowner. Perhaps some of this is highly abrasive. I'm 17 and a half years old. I get married. It's 1956. I buy a house with my new love, and we plant a 3-inch white birch. And it grows for what we think is forever. And we spend half of our life watering that tree because that's the first tree we ever planted. And it turned out to be a 36-foot mature birch tree. And today, buying a mature birch, let's just make it cost $1,800. But buying a 9-foot 3-stem birch costs $300. We may obligate them to buy the more expensive tree just because the tree they cultivated over most of their life grew to a certain size that we now deem necessary to replace at, let's just say, 60% of its size. I just want to be really, really careful that I'm not a town meeting member yet, but the homeowner and their property rights are paramount. And I feel like we're coming down very, very hard on the word tree, singular, when we have lots of developments happening, both commercial and residential, where the concern for trees could be applied to each project. And here we are talking about tree. I hear tree and I hear homeowner in this whole conversation. I just hope by the end of this, or where we chime in as a board, that we do our best to protect the homeowner and their rights.
I hear you. And I can honestly tell you, Nick, that I was actually in that position. My husband and I were lucky enough to own a home in our first years of marriage. And as a wedding gift, we were given 2 trees. And we planted them, where we wanted them, well inside our property line, and nobody would have taken any interest in them. And then I met the new owner like 20 years later. At a conference, and I said, I asked about those 2 particular trees, and she was thrilled to hear the story. So those people have a lot of stories associated with trees, and we would like to work with the planning board so that you don't feel harm. You don't feel like you can't do anything to protect trees in the larger developments, because that's a very, you have way more ability to protect mature trees than anything this bylaw subcommittee ever considered. And we are more than happy to work with you to and I know that you're planning, I know that your subdivisions go to the tree warden and he makes comments on them.
Andrea, so Nick had a good question and point, and I'm sort of confused about this too. This is largely about residential trees, and I don't think in what remains, we do address commercial development areas.
We don't address
Is-
commercial development.
Was there a reason for that?
It's because the planning board is already reviewing commercial development. Unless the planning board would like us to add things in a general bylaw, that would be something they regulated. We took the early, very, I thought, respectful position that zoning and subdivision rules and regs are already in place for commercial development, and any review of tree care and management should be not a general bylaw, but a zoning modification. And like I said, we're here to, if you want to do more about commercial development, we're certainly here for that. And we
I'm
can
not
help.
suggesting we do that. I'm just suggesting that the tree count between residential and commercial development likely far exceeds any of which we might implicate ourselves and or take control over in the private sector, landowner rights sector. And I'm going to be cautious and conscientious of the homeowner and their rights. And some of this just sounds overreaching. I know you reiterated that this is already state law, et cetera, but in that statement, my emotion was anything above and beyond that is far overreaching when there are ways to mitigate loss and or plant trees and or preserve mature trees. I don't want to hold you up. I really wanted to chime in most recently on how a tree of such diameter and such height and such age that comes down needs to be replaced. By no means would I sign on to the fact that the homeowner needs to replace the same species at a minimum, hypothetically, you did not say this, of 70% its size. I mean, that's just bizarre. Trees are expensive and they take time to grow. You plant a juvenile tree and in 26 years or 102 years, whatever it may be, it too will be mature again. It will find its place in the life cycle of a tree. I'm good. I'm really sorry for holding you up.
No problem. It's we've already heard loud and clear that we would never get to 70% replacement value, replacement size on a diameter of a tree. We already know that. And we're also only talking about those trees that are in right of way, which means they're already a public resource. And whether or not we go to drip line and whether or not we go into a 20-foot setback for trees that are planted in the future by the town. But I've heard you loud and clear. And I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to your attention. Is stay out of the private. You would prefer zero additional protections beyond inside a private land. That's what I'm hearing. Zero, and I'm hearing that from two members. I don't want to assume that the two members are speaking for the whole board.
I was speaking for myself. That's correct.
Yeah, I know.
And
That's what
so
I'm
was
saying.
I.
Is
And
two
so
members
was-
pretty clearly.
Yeah, and so was I, speaking for myself, which I still have a right to.
You certainly do, and I've had private conversations with the chairman, and private property rights are extremely important. I understand that. And we were trying to be respectful. Okay. If there are no other comments on this, we aren't going to a town meeting in October. We wanted to, and I'm very glad we're here tonight just to, so that we understand just how careful you'd like us to be. But we are gonna be presenting something to town council and for Springtown meeting probably, and hope to get your feedback through the public process. If you want, unless you want to have more feedback, unless you want to have more opportunities to work with the language on this.
Sorry, Ms. Langhauser, I intentionally withheld any comments until the opportunity to listen to the entire presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa.
I do want to add my 2 cents. And for full clarity, I am also a town meeting member.
So am I.
Raise my hand. I will echo a lot of the same concerns. I am concerned with the presentation about overreaching into property owners' rights on what they can and cannot do with trees on their property. I will take a step back to say, I understand, I think, where this is coming from. Preserving our green resources within the town is an important and noble path to undertake. So I preface any other comment by establishing that criteria, but encroaching on the homeowner's ability to do with their property as they feel may be necessary, I am also very concerned with. Some of the language used here, I don't think goes far enough in clarifying what this is trying to do. There could be some language about, whether certain approvals cannot be unreasonably withheld. I think there could be a focus on mitigation as opposed to punitive measures on something that a homeowner may deem necessary on their property. I understand it. I'm not trying to turn this into a black and white because there's always a little bit of gray. Trees on public setbacks and in public ways. I think there's probably a little bit of negotiation that can happen to preserve our green assets within town. But I am extremely concerned about the overreach of any town in prohibiting the landowner to do what they deem is necessary for the safe keep or upkeep of their own properties.
I appreciate your constructive feedback, Mr. Russell.
Can I add one more comment?
Sure.
I am a big fan of planting. I bought a piece of property that happened to be geographically located in an area where the temperature is above 80 almost all the time. It happened to be about 92 degrees the day of my closing, and I went to a nursery and I bought 88 plants. I got looked at by every human being that drove by in a closed window air-conditioned vehicle like I was a nut, and I planted all 88 of them that day. I don't want you to misunderstand me. What I don't want to happen as a matter of perhaps awareness is that the word gets out, which it won't. This is a dramatic example, but I don't want people who all of a sudden like trees and want to expand upon their property and plant it with plantings. And now they're making sure that they are 21 feet away from and 22 feet next. In other words, I want to promote the planting of trees. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure that we are least abrasive to the homeowners and their rights. I don't want you to misunderstand me that I don't like trees or don't think they're needed. So that I just wanted to finish up with that because I do think trees are important. And I do think people do enjoy planting different things and we should promote and support that, but not when it runs the risk of coming back to haunt them or their children down the road. That's all.
I appreciate it, and clearly, we do need to spend time talking about the setback area is existing trees that are located adjacent to a public way there's no oversight on those. It's only if a tree is planted with public funds. Not a private owner can plant whatever he wants, but if public funds are used to plant a tree and it's agreed upon to put it on the private property, then we're asking that tree continue to have some public oversight. But it's obviously a very, very, very touchy issue. We have to be careful. And I think we need to think more about that because Anne is absolutely correct. I'm sure you're doing it yourself in subdivision review because I was a town planner myself and I was also a town planning board member. And I mean, using the setback, creating a setback area for trees and utilities was common, was often discussed and done. So, it does create for a little more area. And so we're just talking, I thought we were only talking about taking a concept that you might have been using in subdivision review already. That when you ask a developer to plant trees along the side of the road and you have them in a tree easement area, have you done that as a planning board in your subdivision review?
Certainly, correct, Margaret?
Yes, we have, but if you've spoken to Kevin Mello, you know that we no longer want trees planted on sidewalks where sidewalks are, okay? So, and we do control, and we do ask developers to plant trees, okay? But when those trees are planted, they're usually planted in the common area and not on private land. Okay?
Not on a tree easement adjacent to the new
yes,
road?
There could be a tree easement. I haven't done a tree easement recently that I can remember. I mean, maybe I have and I've forgotten about it, but I have not, I don't remember that. We have certainly had developers put trees to block lights, trees to, in commercial, we talk commercial, okay? We've had them do different plantings. But what I perceive that you're speaking about is really, again, and I don't want to be redundant and I don't want to spend the rest of the night on this. When you talk about a 20-foot setback, most roads have a 40-foot. As you know this, you were a planner. So you have 20 feet of pavement, 10 on each side. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and that's the way the new ones are being set up, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way the new ones are being set up. So now you keep mentioning 20 feet. Are you talking 20 feet from that road that's 20 feet? So now you're maybe coming into my land?
So
10 feet into my land?
So I recognize that, and in the situation that of new development, the 20 feet wouldn't come into play very often unless you already created a tree easement. It wouldn't come into play very often because there already is a significant amount of public space on either side. The easement, the setback area comes into play more often on the older streets where
that's what I'm trying to talk to you about, Andrea. Let's use Russell's Mills Road, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So in Russell's Mills Road, you have a 40-foot wide road, and you have 10 feet on each side.
You wouldn't necessarily need to put a tree easement. You wouldn't necessarily need to use a setback if you have sufficient room.
Okay, so you could put a tree in that 10 feet.
Sure.
Okay.
And the setback area is only up to, and it's if it's needed.
I understand that, but I think Nick and I are a little concerned about, and I don't really want to, I want my other members and Helio spoken to, it seems to me that, again, you're tiptoeing into private land. You're tiptoeing into private people's and property rights. And it almost becomes an eminent domain if you want to take my tree down. Okay, that's my feeling. And,
okay. Well, certainly, I have no intention of being involved in any project that triggers eminent domain. And town council would never let us get to that point. But I do very much appreciate your feedback because this is the kind of feedback we're talking concepts here. So knowing this ahead of time, we're trying to write a bylaw that can that actually gets enough support to pass town meeting the first time. So I very much appreciate your feedback, and we'll take it under consideration. And let me know what level of further review you'd like to have with this. The tree warden presently is a DPW employee. Public Works very much wanted to know if planning board wanted to take this on. I didn't expect you would, and I'm certainly going to go back and say I don't think they do. But let me know how much additional feedback you want to give us as we move forward.
I just
Well,
want to thank,
I'd like to see it. When you rewrite this, okay, I'm hearing that you're probably going to rewrite some of these things. I, for one, I can't speak for all my board members, but I would like to see it come back. And so I'd like to address it again, because we all love trees. There's this, I mean, I love trees, okay? Everybody here realizes the value of trees. So yes, you know, I'd like to see you come back.
I just want to thank all of you for your time. Also on an upbeat note, Town Hall is about to have 2 new trees, 2 tupelos, which are going to be put in with funds that we raised. And right next door at middle school, if you notice, there are 8 small trees with bags on them, watering bags. We just planted those. Bourne Knolls planted those for us last October. So we're beginning.
Good.
Yeah.
That's-
Very nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Before we close this up, I have some questions here. I'm the last person to comment, almost always, but I'd rather listen in and kind of leverage off other comments and responses. But the setback, if I heard you correctly, applies not to existing trees. It applies only to trees within a certain setback area that are planted with town funds. Is that correct?
With town funds and with owner permission.
And to date, there are no setback trees that have been planted with those 2 permissions. I just asked Tim
Yeah, we have
Barber.
no written,
So-
there's nothing written in town hall.
Can you provide me like an example of when town funds would be used to plant a tree on somebody else's property?
Well,
I'm
I'll
trying to,
give you-
I'm
yeah,
just trying to
we're trying-
understand.
we're trying to start an adopt a tree program. And in that case, we're going to ask residents, would you like a tree? Either New Bedford is doing this with great success. And by the way, anybody who drives into New Bedford will see what they're doing with trees these days. It's just extraordinary. But someone will say, a resident will say, yes, I'll pay you $250 for a tree. And we'll have a contractor come over, and it will probably be a setback tree. And whether, how long the town will, the contractor will take care of that tree. There are many different examples of this. You know, Wellesley, is it Wellesley? That takes care of, Concord takes care of a setback tree, plants it, takes care of it for 2 years. Other places take care of it for longer. Others immediately hand it over to the residents, say, we planted it, you've paid for it, we planted it, and it's yours to take care of. There are many different scenarios here.
But
If I could give you an existing
case,
example, Mr. Estes, are you familiar with driving down Elm Street, kind of close, like a block or two before you get to the cultural center? There's some big stumps of trees that were recently old trees that needed to be taken down. There's no room between the pavement and the narrow sidewalk for a tree.
those. Not in the same spot. Get it?
And no trees were planted there. There wasn't a requirement. But if a replacement tree were to be put in, that would be a good place to ask the landowner if we could put it on the private side of the sidewalk instead of the public side of the sidewalk. That's an example. You have when you're trying to pigeonhole the sidewalk and maybe the bike lane into an older right of way.
So it's a town-owned tree, and whoever buys that property 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, they just have to know that they can't, that tree is a town-owned tree.
And there's quite a few examples of towns that leave it informal, and they may never know. And there are other towns, Northampton being the example we were using, where they actually make it well known by putting it as a deed restriction. So there's different ways of handling it. It could be lost.
Well, the formality of the notification has to match the formality of the enforcement.
Right. If you can't,
so if you're going to enforce something, then you better notify somebody before they buy it.
Exactly.
So I'm not so much upset about the setback issue. Changing the drip line, all of a sudden, I live on William Street down by Anthony Beach. We've planted a couple of beech trees, and one of them for sure has a drip line that goes over the street. And if you're telling me that I can't trim the way I want to, I know how to prune trees and trim trees to my liking, and what the reason that we put them there for and to accomplish that reason, that goal. That's where I have some heartburn on that.
Yeah, and I hear you. Is it possible that in this hypothetical situation, that if you called the tree warden and you guys would it offend you to call the tree warden and say, I'm thinking of trimming this, can we talk about it? Because trimming would never require a permit.
Okay. I mean,
do you expect he would come to do you expect a tree warden who had any sense of what, how a tree is supposed to be managed would have a different opinion? I really think you good people who love trees are not the ones that this is set for. I really think you guys know how to take care of trees.
Right.
And so I don't think the tree warden's going to disagree with you. But you might but would you be offended to have to call them?
Well, I guess I would, because if I wouldn't think to call
them. Yeah.
Okay. That's my tree. I planted it, and just because the drip line approaches the street or comes very close to the street, I wouldn't even think to do it.
Right. And
so I guess if I'm calling the warden and asking for advice and getting his advice on how to do it, I might not be offended to do that. But if all of a sudden my neighbor sees me cutting a tree and they call the tree warden, and the tree warden says, hey, you're pruning that tree and you don't have a permit for it, here's your penalty. Now I got a problem with it.
Yeah, I totally get that.
And the drip line, when I planted a 6-foot tree, and I've been here 20 years, now it's much bigger, and the canopy goes beyond the street line. Now it becomes a different event. I do that. I like your goal. I like your intent, but I have a little bit of heartburn with that.
I appreciate that.
And I think that's what you're looking for, is what we like and don't like, right?
That's exactly. It's exactly. Yeah. And that's why, we didn't put a lot of effort into actually writing a very tight bylaw, because we wanted to know what we were trying to say first.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that on that drip line tree, and you sought the advice, you would never need a permit under any of these scenarios, because you're just trimming. The purpose of the permit is for removal.
Yeah, I still have a problem with removal too. I planted it. It's my tree.
Yeah, and so the reason we had that trigger is we would hope that you'd be interested in planting another tree.
There's a reason I planted it in the first place, and if I'm removing it, it's probably because it's sick or it's gotten too large, and it's not safe for some reason. And I would be planting it, returning the cycle when I give the house to my kids.
Yeah, I thank you very much, Mr. Estes. That's a really good example, and I got a better sense of the concern. And so thank you very much. So heard you loud and clear.
Okay.
And we will be moving forward. We've made modifications off of what you responded to. We've already begun to make modifications with the tree warden, and we're bringing those new proposals to the Board of Public Works. And I think, your feedback is going to mean a lot to them, because we want to get this right the first time. We will let you know. We'll let when you have a new planning staff in place. We'll let you know when we have another bylaw and another iteration. And I probably and we'll ask if you're interested in having it come forward in this format, or if you just want to have one of your planning board members or your staff review it with us offline. Your choice.
I personally, I like this format as the stand-in chairman for the night.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll keep you posted as to changes moving forward.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your
Good
time.
night. Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along. Minutes for July 22nd and 29th. Helio, that's not something that you can vote on.
I was going to abstain.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve and file the July 22nd minutes.
And the 29th?
Motion by Nick Secretariats and seconded by Margaret Sweet. Nick,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
and Kevin Estes votes yes. Correspondence. We don't have anybody to talk about the correspondence. Does anybody have any opinions on it, having read it?
No, it's all kind of straightforward, Kevin.
Okay, in that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Is that to accept and file, or is that to file?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept and file the correspondence as noted.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Nick Secretariats, second by Margaret Sweet. Nick,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Kevin Estes votes yes. Moving on to information and new business. Zoning Board of Appeals decisions and legal ads. We don't really have anything to speak on that topic unless anybody else that's here does. Subcommittee reports. Has anybody had any subcommittee meetings?
Negative.
Nor have I.
I have had one.
Oh, sorry, Margaret.
That's okay. I have had community preservation. And for the life of me, I am so sorry, Kevin. I cannot remember what we were talking about. I'm sorry. I'll have to postpone that until the 9th because I cannot remember. Okay.
Okay. We'll consider that subcommittee report postponed until the 9th. The planners report, we'd love to have a planner. So I assume we're going to postpone the planners report as well. The chairperson's report is the chairperson is absent, so I will postpone that report until the 9th. And that leaves the 6th item of our agenda. I will entertain a motion.
I hate to do it, but I'll do it. I make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I second.
I thought you guys were gonna let Helio do something.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I got-
Helio, we are very happy to have,
Helio, make the motion.
yeah, well, we'd like it, well, we first of all, we should say that we're very happy to have you with us, Helio.
Yes,
I'm
Yeah.
very, I look forward to, learning some things from you because you have a vast knowledge, and experience. And, I think you're gonna bring, a lot to this board. And I'm very happy to have you on this board.
Helio,
Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
now that Margaret spoke, before you respond, I just want to tell you, I'm happy to have you here and I'm grateful I no longer have to respect you like a referee.
I didn't say that.
Is there a conflict of interest here we have to worry about?
Well, Mr. Estes, if you'll grant me the opportunity to just say a couple of things.
Please.
I too am humbled and grateful to be a part of this body. It is a privilege to serve Dartmouth in this capacity and to serve it with you. And my goal is to not only bring some objectiveness and perspective from my chair, but to foster that collaborative environment with all of you. I didn't minimize the impact statement of what the family atmosphere is within this planning board, and I hope to fit in seamlessly in time and to earn your trust and confidence as well. I will also, because it's a matter of public comment, express my gratitude to Mr. Psychopatis for not exercising his right to at the July 22nd hearing to give up his seat to make accommodations, because as it's reflective, the town and the planning board needs more Nick Psychopatis. So thank you for not acting on that, although
Much appreciated.
although we can all appreciate what leadership and compassion looks like. So again, just really happy to be a part of this, and I look forward to our collaboration.
I'm looking forward to
Thank you,
working
Helio.
with you as well, Helio.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I'll maintain that position. I second it.
You second it. Great. Vote, Helio
Yes.
and Nick Psychopatis
Yes.
and Margaret.
Yes,
And Kevin Estes votes yes. Welcome, Helio. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
We're on for the, before we get out of here, we're on for, is it the 9th?
yes, September 9th.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
See you
Good night.
all.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Thanks so much for your service.